Hi, and welcome to Enriched Perspective with Mike and Talesha Wallace, where we seek to shift paradigms through the exploration of biblical principles. I'm Mike.
And I'm Talesha.
Welcome to the podcast.
Today we're going to be talking about living the dream. It's important to know how to embrace the dream and trust the process until fulfillment. One person of interest in this regard is Joseph. Let's start our conversation with his story. Mike?
Yes, living the dream. So this is actually a very good topic for discussion. Joseph, to start out, was, of course, the 11th son of Jacob. He was the first child of Rachel, and he was the one that everybody knows had the coat of many colors because his father favored him over the rest of his brethren because he was born by the wife, which his father actually loved.
Mm-hmm.
Whole backstory there. Getting into the story, of course, you know he had the dream. He actually had two dreams.
Right.
The first dream, of course, had his brothers, when they interpreted it, bowing down to him. And then the second dream was not only his brothers, but also his father and his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And having those dreams, like I said, caused a hatred to kind of manifest. It was already there between him and his brothers
Right.
because of how his father treated him. But it grew into, even more to the point where they put him in the pit, as you know the story, sold him off into slavery. He was in Potiphar's house, da-da-da-da-da. He ended up getting accused of rape, going to jail, ended up being there for a while, and boom, before you know it, as you would think, he ends up standing next to Pharaoh and becoming the governor, so to speak, of Egypt.
Okay, so let's put some years
Yeah.
on this timeline here. The Bible talks about how old he was when all this happened. So kind of let's back up a little bit with the times, the ages.
Okay, so I'll rewind it a bit. So when he had the dreams initially, he was only 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And at 17, he also got sold into slavery.
Right.
The Bible doesn't record his age again until he's about 28 years old.
Wow.
And when he was, actually, it records when he was 30.
Mm-hmm.
But you can backtrack, and it was about 28 years old when he actually interpreted the dreams for the baker and the butler while he was in prison.
Right.
In between 17 and 28 is where he got sold into slavery.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Potiphar's house, and, of course, he was made the head of his house. And then his wife, Potiphar's wife, accused him of rape, and then he ended up going into prison.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really say how long he was in Potiphar's house and how long he was in prison. It just says that there was a transition that happened there.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, while he was in prison, he was made head over the prison, by the guard, and that's where he met the baker and the butler.
Right.
Of course, he interpreted their dreams, and then he asked I believe it was the butler, like, say, once you get restored back to your position, please make sure, you kind of mention me to Pharaoh, let him know that, I'm not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
I'm a Hebrew, this is kind of, I'm unjustly put in prison, so forth and so on.
Right. He was
But
innocent.
Yes. And it was another 2 years after that interpretation that he actually stood before Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
So in all, he was actually, between slavery and prison, he was there for about 13 years.
Wow.
And then after that, like I say, when he stood before Pharaoh,
Mm-hmm.
he interpreted Pharaoh's dream about, the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine.
Right.
It was through the 7 years of plenty, he was working for Pharaoh and he was collecting the food and everything, stocking up the storehouses.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was in the second year of famine that his brothers actually came to him, asking for, at the behest of their father, asking for grain and corn because the famine was so great.
Mm-hmm.
So it was actually a 9-year gap between when he stood before Pharaoh for the first time and when his brothers came and bowed down to him.
Wow.
So now let's do the math again.
Yeah.
So 17 years old is when he had the dream,
Right.
both dreams. And it wasn't until he was 39 years old when the dream was fulfilled. So that's a 22-year gap
Oh my.
between the time he had the dream and the time it was fulfilled.
Wow.
Right. And the thing that we're talking about today is living the dream.
Yeah.
When you look at Joseph's situation, that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
To have, such a magnificent dream presented to you or revealed to you.
Mhm.
Evidently he was an interpreter of dreams because he did that quite a few times, over the
Mhm.
course of his tenure in prison. And that's what caused him to stand before Pharaoh.
Right.
So he understood in part what the dream was what it meant, as well as his brothers. That's why they
Yeah.
got so upset, as well
Yeah.
as his father. That's why he rebuked them in a
Yeah.
sense, because he was
Sure
like,
did.
what were you trying to say? We going to be bowed down to you?
Right.
But it was 22 years, some of it long, and I'm assuming pretty hard
Right.
years before he actually became, or that dream came to pass.
Right. The process. That's
Yeah.
something.
And that's the part that we want to really focus in on,
Oh yeah.
is the process.
And he's like the perfect example of getting through the process. 17 years old, get two dreams saying, "Hey, you're going to be great. People are going to bow down to you." And you do not, it didn't happen overnight. You didn't wake up and like, boom,
Yeah.
bow down to me.
And it wasn't just anybody. It was his brothers
His,
and his father and his
right.
mother.
Wow. That's crazy. So that is what we're going to be talking about. Just the process, the getting through, living the actual dream.
Yes. So I'm laughing because your eyes got
I
bugged.
know. I'm so excited about this topic. I'm like, oh my God, this is so. We've been talking about this for I don't know how many days now, but it's like, oh, I hope that it comes across to the listeners how much passion we have about this topic and how important that we have to get this. So,
Yeah. So let's just start off with one of the points that we kind of had.
mhm,
First and foremost, knowing from whence cometh the dream. And that's part of the issue that a lot of us have, is when we have dreams and we have visions, or we have thoughts about our future.
mhm,
A lot of times we don't know kind of the origin of those thoughts and dreams and visions.
yeah,
Of course, we know that God does provide, or he gives dreams and visions. That's how he speaks to us. I believe
mhm,
it's in Job 33rd chapter, talks about that, like visions of the night on our bed. He
mhm,
speaks. Also, when you talk about in the books of Acts, as well as Joel, when he talks about pouring out of his spirit,
mhm,
he said, your young men shall dream dreams and see visions, women shall see visions. So that is a mode of operation for God. Even
right,
with his prophets, he said he deal with them in dreams and in visions.
right,
And he uses that to communicate to us his purpose and his will and his
mhm,
desire for our lives. A
yeah,
lot of times, though, as it relates to that, we also conjure up our own dreams and our own visions.
mhm,
Ecclesiastes talks about that, where it says, because of the multitude of business, we dream dreams or have visions.
right,
And a lot of times where we run into the challenge is we don't know the difference between what God has said, or the vision that God has for us, versus the vision that we have for ourselves.
right. That's so true. And we see it all the time. And people jump up and say, "Oh, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. I have this great dream. I'm going to be used greatly by God," and all that. Just coming up with your own stuff sometimes.
Yeah, and it's
And
because of, again, the multitude of business, the
yeah,
things that you see, the people that you're around, the influences that you allow in your life.
mhm,
They can shape how you see your future.
yeah,
It's good. A lot of times you want to have good influences in your life. You want to have people, that have accomplished something or that are doing something, to inspire you, so
mhm,
that you can pursue similar, endeavors.
yeah,
But the thing is when it comes down to the visions and the dreams that God gives you, it has to trump that.
yeah,
And that's where we a lot of times run into challenges, when our visions and our dreams of our future do not align with what God is telling us. Even more so, sometimes we don't even know that God is really speaking to us, because we're dull of hearing, or because we have so many other things going on in our mind.
mhm,
We're not in tune or attentive to what it is that God really wants for our future.
yeah,
We're so, for lack of a better way of saying it, hell bent on
yeah,
accomplishing what we want to accomplish in our lives till nothing else matters.
yeah. Like tunnel vision, just short sighted, obsessed. This, I know this is what I'm here for. This, and you haven't really sought the Lord, or like you say, you're not listening
Correct.
because it's not fitting into how you see how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
So you'll miss all of that. But that's why you say you have to know where the dream is coming from.
Yeah, and it's kind of applauded in our society for us to be singularly focused in that
Mhm.
regard. like I say, have a vision, have a dream, have a idea, of what your future should be, and go after it.
Yeah.
And you put all your time, your energy, your effort, your resources towards accomplishing,
Right.
this dream.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily bad, but
No.
it's just one of those things where if you really want to get to get the most out of your life, if you want to really be able to, have fulfillment, have joy, have happiness, and really, accomplish all that you are able to, it's better to make sure that that dream is aligned with what God is calling for you,
Yeah.
what God is asking of you, what God is, seeing you to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing about it is, when God speaks, like when he told Joseph that dream, when he showed Joseph that dream, it was almost like gave him something to hold on to, because as we can see, it didn't happen overnight. Look at all those years that went by. If Joseph would have been like, you know what, maybe it was just me. Maybe I just thought this up, but it was to help him be prepared for going through to get the dream, the process that it took for him to be ready to receive that dream.
Yeah. And I can imagine, like I said, when he first had the dream, not only one, but two dreams, the second dream probably solidified in his mind that it must is going to happen. It's
Yeah.
going to be so. So he probably got a little excited.
Yeah.
He's 17. You're
Mm-hmm.
immature, you're young, you're anxious, you're
Yes.
excited. You're
Mm.
just about to enter into those stages of adulthood where you start making your own decisions and start
Mm-hmm.
marking out your own path. So,
Yeah.
yeah, he probably did kind of speak it in excitement, speak it like, hey, guess what? I had these dreams. And he probably said it,
Mm.
as a child and as a youth with exuberance and
Yeah.
excitement. And they took it as, oh, you think you better than
Oh,
me.
yep. Yep, exactly. You got to be careful who you tell your dreams to,
Yeah,
who you share them with.
absolutely. And I probably wouldn't have shared it with them personally because it's like, yeah, you don't really like me like that.
You think they didn't? You think he picked up on it? Like
After he probably
they
said
don't
something, he did.
like me too much here.
Probably like the minute he said, he was like, oh.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
But by then it was already out, and now you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
But even before then, like when we talk about that dream and knowing from whence it comes,
Mhm.
like I said, when it's a God-given dream, it really is kind of one of those things where you're about to transition.
Yeah.
So when God reveals something to you, or he shows you or discloses to you, an aspect or a portion or a piece of your future, you probably want to get prepared because something's about to happen.
Yeah.
Like I say, when God speaks, it's not for naught. Like I
Mhm.
said, he's just not going to waste his words. He's not going to waste his visions and revelations on you. But
Mhm.
something's you're about to go into a phase of transition.
Yeah.
And that's the part that as we dream, we don't think about that too much.
Yeah. That's that. Wake up.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's why we're so quick to tell everybody and share with everybody because we see this part. We see the end game as we
Mhm.
suppose. We'll get to that later. But we think it's, oh, this is going to happen for me.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to be and so forth and so on. We get so excited and we get so, just gung-ho and zealous for us to be able to accomplish that dream.
Mhm.
And we just go tell everybody.
Yes.
Not realizing, like, you're about to start transitioning, right?
Yeah.
And you know that some of these people that you're talking to and that you're sharing the dream with could be a part of that transition.
Yeah.
He didn't know that his brothers were going to put him into the pit.
Nope.
That probably was the furthest thing from his mind that his brothers were going to do something like that to him.
Right.
But they were a part of his transition.
Yes.
And actually living in his part of living the dream.
Yeah, that's something. Like it was all orchestrated by God, like the timing,
Absolutely.
everything, just the Ishmaelites and the people traveling to Egypt. All of this was set in place by God.
Yeah.
Like this all has to happen in order for Joseph to get to Egypt to fulfill that part of the dream.
Yeah, because quite frankly, how else would he have gotten there?
Exactly.
And that's something that we struggle with at times when things don't go our way or things are, not quite as pretty or as rosy as we would expect it to be in our journey and in our living of the dream. We get all frustrated, we get mad, we get upset, we get despondent, we get discouraged because it didn't happen the way I thought it was going to happen.
Exactly.
The way I interpreted the dream, I don't see how it's going to come to pass by me going in this direction.
Right.
And I'm very certain that he didn't think that going to Egypt was a part of the necessary plan.
Yeah.
Because again, he was looking at it, well, I got my brothers
Mhm.
and I got my mother and my father.
Mhm.
They're the ones that I saw
Exactly.
bowing down to me. So why in the world am I going to Egypt.
Right.
And not just going to Egypt, but I'm going to Egypt as a slave. I go from free to now being put into slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to speak for me. Like I say, watching these movies as of late and different things, I'm quite sure it wasn't the same
I
type of
hope.
slavery
Whew.
as they had in America. But,
Mm-hmm.
just my context and my view of slavery in general is like going from being free, roaming the fields, being able to come and go as I please,
Right.
having a father that loves me and cares about me deeply, so much to so that he's showing favor to me, having a mother that's probably doting on me because I'm her first child when at first she wasn't going to be able to have children,
Mm-hmm.
among my
Yeah.
brothers, even though they didn't like me. I didn't really know that. So I was
Yeah.
good. I just thought I was just younger than them and they was just, trying to be
Mm-hmm.
funny. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going from all of these comforts, and all of these thoughts of, I'm going to be the head of the household to now
Mm-hmm.
I'm in slavery.
Right.
Now I'm traveling, so many miles away from my family to a country that I know nothing about, with
Mm-hmm.
people that I don't know what they're going to do to me. I didn't know if they was going to keep me or what was going to happen.
Right.
I didn't know it was hard slavery. I didn't know it was going to be in the house. I don't know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I have lost complete control of my life in an instant.
Wow.
But I had this dream though.
Right. And God gave it to him.
Exactly.
It wasn't like he was just like, I was talking to my friends and I had this dream,
Yeah.
like the multitude of business type of
Right.
situation.
It wasn't like I was thinking to myself.
And then,
I said, "Self, you're gonna be great."
Yeah. And they're going to bow down to me. It wasn't even,
Right.
God didn't tell him, hey, this is what's going to happen, but this is what you have to go through to get it. It was just
Correct.
like, I'm going to show you this. Now go. Like,
Correct.
everything just goes haywire. Like, wait a minute, this is not matching what I saw in my dream.
Yeah, but like I say, that dream led to the beginning of a transition.
Yeah.
And he had that dream. He started living that dream almost immediately.
Right.
Things
Not in the
started to
sense
happen.
of how you would think.
Oh, no. We think living the dream is getting to the fulfillment.
Right. Yeah.
All of the process that you go through is a part of living that dream.
Yeah. So we have to embrace this journey.
Oh, yeah.
You might as well. You might as well. I don't even.
Yeah, but that junk hurt.
Because it's when we see the end of Joseph's story, but he didn't know that this is how it's going to end up.
Nope.
So we look at all the things he went through in the time, all those years.
Mm-hmm.
He went through. What was his mindset at the time? Like, well, God gave me this dream, so I'm just gonna just keep waiting. Not today, maybe. Like how he was able to embrace the journey because God was with him, and he proved that he was with them. Even Potiphar's house was given to him. Everything that was in Potiphar's hand, he gave to Joseph besides his wife. He didn't know what he had besides what he ate.
True.
It was like God was with Joseph, and the Bible even says that so people could see, even though he was going through and he was in his trials, God was still with him, helping him through the journey, but he still had to go through it,
Yeah. And part of that embracing of the journey is you have to be willing to learn.
Yeah.
Be willing to grow. And then you also have to execute as well. I mean, you gotta do what you do. One of the things that sometimes prohibits us from really being able to come to the fulfillment of the dream sooner rather than later
Mm-hmm.
is we quit.
Yeah.
Right in the midst of us being made or, us being matured or us being developed for where God wants us to be,
Right.
we quit because it's not what we expected. It's harder than what we anticipated. Things ain't going in the direction that we thought it would, especially in the timing that we think it would.
Exactly.
Not understanding that the trials that we go through, they're the things that are preparing us for the fulfillment of that dream. To your point,
Mm-hmm.
he was in Potiphar's house. The Bible says God was with Joseph,
Mm-hmm.
and it was evident because everything that Joseph touched, everything that he was over and responsible for, God blessed it. And Potiphar understood that
Mm-hmm.
to the point where even when he was in prison,
Yep.
same thing.
Yep.
And all of these points of his life were really points of preparation and development. I'm pretty sure Potiphar's house was pretty big. It was significant. He probably had, a lot of land and different
Mm-hmm.
things. So,
Right.
Joseph probably had some significant responsibilities,
Mm-hmm.
but he was a slave.
See?
But he had the responsibility. He had the opportunity to learn, to grow, develop,
Right.
to enhance and hone his skills, as a manager, as an administrator,
Yeah.
as a leader. He had that opportunity even while he was a slave.
Wow.
Then you get over into prison. It's, again, another situation,
Mm-hmm.
not his fault. He had nothing to do with it, just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
And now you go from, like, say, bad to worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like at least with slavery, you had some freedoms. You had some accoutrements. Of good living, because he was the head of Potiphar's house. So I'm pretty sure he ate okay. He probably
Mm-hmm.
ate the greatest, but he ate pretty good.
Yeah.
He knew everything that was going on, so he probably had some amenities and some perks.
Yeah.
But now you're in prison.
Yeah. But even in prison, he found favor.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to say. The same thing happened. God was with Joseph while he was even in prison, to the point where exactly how it happened at Potiphar's house. Here we
Mm-hmm.
go again. Joseph, before you know it, he in charge of everything.
Wow.
And he's running the prison
Mm-hmm.
effectively,
Yep.
building on what he had already started when he was at Potiphar's house. Now he's building upon that in prison.
Yeah.
The funny thing is if he stayed at home with all his brothers in front of him, he would have never really had the opportunity to develop or enhance or hone those skills,
Right.
because you had Reuben all the way down to one of them other ones before him. It was a lot of them boys. I mean, he was the second to last. It was him, and then it was Benjamin. So if you know all of the other 10, that's who all was in front of him.
Yeah.
And Reuben was the head. And if you look at it, Reuben was the one that was the rightful heir, to the inheritance, because he
Mhm.
was the eldest son.
Wow.
So Joseph really didn't have a chance. He was so deep in that lineup,
Oh yeah.
that would he have ever gotten even the opportunity to really begin to develop and hone those skills that God had placed in him,
Yeah.
had he not been sent to slavery,
But-
had he not went to prison, and while he was
Mhm.
there, as much as he didn't like being there, as much as it was inconvenient for him,
Yep.
he didn't quit.
Right.
He didn't sulk. He didn't get down and get depressed and discouraged and despondent to the point where he just stopped doing what God placed in him to do.
Mhm.
They say he kept working.
Yep.
He kept learning. He kept
Mhm.
growing. He kept executing.
Right.
And they said he had an excellent spirit. And because
Mhm.
of that, it happened so later that there was an opportunity.
Yep. Took him 2 years to remember. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
there was one in prison that interpreted my dream.
Yeah, but
Had-
the opportunity, like I said,
Yep.
it was 2 years beforehand.
Yep.
Where he had the dreams and he
Oh,
interpreted
yes.
them.
Mhm.
And then it was a whole 2 year span before anybody even remembered that he had did that.
Yep.
But if we look at the numbers, though, from 17 to 28,
Mhm.
he was
Wow.
28 when he interpreted the dreams, but he had 11 years up until he got to the point of interpreting the dreams, where he was just putting in that work.
Wow.
He was living.
See, that's crazy. Like, if it's God ordained, if you can't force it, you don't want to force what God has planned for us.
Oh, no.
You know.
And that's sometimes where we definitely falter.
Mhm.
Instead of embracing the moment, embracing the journey, being present where we are, because it's something that we don't like, because it's something that is not convenient or comfortable for us,
Mhm.
we try to force our way out of it. We
Mhm.
try to go into other areas and venues and arenas. And unfortunately, we're not getting everything that we need in order for us to be prepared for us to get to the fulfillment of
Yeah.
the dream that God has given us.
Yeah, like back to what we were saying before, you're blindsided, so you're going to be more frustrated
Mm-hmm.
in the process, as opposed to actually working towards the fulfillment. You're going to be stuck in resentment, anger,
Yep.
offense, because things aren't working how I want them to work right now,
Yep. And we stop working.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start leaning to our own understanding, and we start making a mess of things. We start trying our own way
Mm-hmm.
instead of really just trusting what God has done, and he's doing.
Right.
We start trying to make our own moves, as we say,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want this. This ain't what I was expecting. This isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Taking too long.
Oh, that's a big one. Taking too long. And for
Yeah.
us, 11 years seems like a very, very, very long time.
Right. So you're getting older. You're looking around like, man,
Yep.
okay, maybe this is it. Maybe I'll just stop here. Maybe it was just a dream. Like
Right.
maybe it really was just a dream.
And the thing was, he wasn't really doing a whole lot to make the dream come to pass.
No, he was just
He was just living,
living.
because he wasn't really. The Bible doesn't speak of him making any specific moves, to be in leadership in his household, because he
Right.
wasn't even there.
Mm-hmm.
The place that he saw himself, he was completely removed from that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And for 11 years, he's serving somewhere else.
Yep.
And
Yep.
for him, like I say, he had to know and he had to trust that God was with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had mentioned before, even to the point when Potiphar's wife, tried to seduce him and, make him lie with her. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
look, I know I'm not at home with my dad and my family, but it's bigger than them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't sin against God. So
Right.
therefore, as much as I probably flesh wise would like to do it, I think we've talked about this before, and being a young man and
Mm-hmm.
realizing the situation that you in, and probably
Right.
strategic in this thought, like, well, if I got Potiphar's wife, then, I pretty much got like all control of the house. I could pretty much come and go and do as I please.
Mm-hmm.
I really can become the man.
Right.
But he didn't want to sin against God.
Right.
So he was willing to suffer being wrongly accused,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially could have cost him his life,
Right.
but he's like, I can't do this against God. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what solidified, to me with God, like he's for me. He wants me. He trusts me. Because a lot of times we find ourselves when we're going through the process of living through our dream and, coming to the fulfillment, where the enemy does come in and he does tempt us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not careful, well, because it looks good, it's attractive, it's something that can get us out of our current situation.
Mm-hmm.
It can provide some sense of relief and
Mm-hmm.
solace. And because we can't see, where this is going, sometimes we jump at it
Yep.
and we short circuit
Yeah.
our dream or the dream that God has given us.
Right. Or the dream he had. Yeah. He has for us. So we have to trust the process and just rest in the arms of God.
Uh-huh.
His timing is perfect. He has it all orchestrated. Everything happens for a reason. If we just follow his will, his plan, his leading, it will make a huge difference. We have to come out of our own minds, and we're not writing a script. As I try to say, I'm not writing a script. I don't know how this story is going to end. I just know that there is an end. God has an end for me. As he said, the expected, and everybody talks about,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, but I don't know how I'm going to get there.
Yes.
But it's like, I don't want to quit, because that's a temptation too. Like we talk about drugs, alcohol, but quitting is another temptation that the enemy will bring. Just stop. It's
Sure.
not working. You've been toiling this ground for the longest. You've been giving, you've been sowing, you've been doing this, you've been doing that. Nothing's working out. Why are you doing this? You got family and friends look like they succeeding. They just woke up and everything's working out for them, and here you are still struggling with the same old, and are you sure the Lord told you that? Just all these things
True.
could be coming at you while you're trusting the process God has for you, and just keeping the faith and not going your own accord. Like, forget it, I'm just gonna do what I want to do. This ain't make no sense. So
True.
we have to trust the process.
Yeah, and that trusting comes with submission and
Mm-hmm.
committing our ways to Him, and then beginning to focus on seeking His will and His guidance for our lives.
Right.
Because again, it's so easy to lean to our own understanding. It's so
Mm-hmm.
easy to forget to acknowledge God in all of our ways. We're intelligent people.
Mm-hmm.
We got sense. Some of us are, we're educated. We're reasonable, in our thoughts and how we see things and how we perceive things to move forward.
Right.
So, it's easy to lean to our own understanding, especially
Mm-hmm.
when things do not look like they're driving towards the finish line that we see or that we expect. And to your point, it's just a discipline that we have to develop.
Yeah, it's a faith.
Yep. Like you look at Psalms 37, has quite a few scriptures that talks about the different ways in which we should be, like
Right.
trusting in the Lord, delighting ourselves also in the Lord, committing our ways into the Lord, and
Right.
resting in the Lord. We always talk about delight thyself in the Lord, He'll give you
Mm-hmm.
the desires of your heart. And, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that you got to understand that when you delight yourself in the Lord, that means that you are moving away from your own desires and your
Yes.
own plans and your own ambitions, your own visions, and really beginning to delight and to
Mm-hmm.
trust and to conform and to really buy into what it
Mm-hmm.
is that He has for you.
Yeah.
And when you begin to do that, yeah, He will give you the desires of your heart.
Mm-hmm.
He will begin to not only give you the things that you want, but He will put into your heart what you desire.
Mm-hmm.
He will replace the desires that you've had for certain things in your life, or certain, accomplishments, or certain stanchions, and He'll put something else there,
Mm-hmm.
and then He will begin to work through you and with you to accomplish those things.
Right. And it's like the closer or the more you delight yourself in the Lord, the more your desires change towards His will. It's like it's
Exactly.
no longer a self-centered prayer, or He's going to give me everything I want. So it may have started off with a lot of material things, a lot of fleshly, prideful things that make you feel good about yourself, and eventually, the closer you get, the more you delight in the Lord. Those desires are probably more than likely going to change more towards what's important to God. Not what's important to you. Like
Exactly.
serving others, submitting to others, helping. It's not going to be only about me, myself, and I. So just
Yeah.
understand that.
Because most of our dreams are usually me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
Just me, myself, and I.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know the rest of that song, but
I don't even know that song, but yeah.
but and it's a challenge again to us as we go through this life, and we're taught to have these visions and have
Yeah.
these dreams for our future.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we're told that we're aimless, or
Mhm.
we're just kind of existing. And you don't want to just exist. You want to have something in front of you that you're pursuing, and something that you're chasing after, something that you're working towards and for. So we develop these dreams,
Yeah.
and they become so solidified in our minds that it's difficult for us to make the transition to dropping what we want to do
Right.
and really now focusing on what God has given us and what God has told us that is
Yes.
His dream and His will for our lives.
That is like easier said than done.
Yeah, but that's
Oh,
that's where that
we got
committing and submitting comes in,
yes.
and that's the part that we struggle. I'm speaking
Yeah.
candidly about
Oh,
myself.
yeah.
We struggle with that, especially
Mhm.
when you talk about natural matters.
Yeah.
You talk about career development, growth and progression. You talk
Mhm.
about education. You talk about even your children,
Yeah.
and just their paths for their future. Submitting all of that to God and putting it in His hands and trusting
Mhm.
that He has the best interest of us all at heart, and He's going to do what's best
Mhm.
in spite of what I see.
Right.
That's
That's
that's tough.
it is, but He say that if you trust in Him, that's what pleases Him. Having faith
Absolutely.
in Him. I can see that now. It's like you're saying, Lord, I don't even. It's here. Take this. Whatever you want, I'm gonna do it. I'm not even gonna complain. I'm just gonna do what you have in mind for me to do. Even
True.
though I'm talented in this area, I'm great, and everybody thinks I'm good at this. I'm really good at that. What do you want me to do with these talents and gifts that you gave me?
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a lot to just submit to God.
True.
It's hard because you can't see anything.
Yeah. Well, the Bible say that we walk by faith
And not
and
by
not by sight.
yeah.
One of the bullets before we get even deeper into that particular conversation is that the time of fulfillment is far exceeds the time of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And just for a better way of saying, worth it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, we have to understand that
Oh
when we
God.
submit our ways to the Lord, and we really do, come under the authority and the suggestion to His plan for our lives, although there may be those times in our lives where things are not working out the way we expect it to,
Mm-hmm.
just know that when you get to where He has you to be, or He will have you to be, that expected end far exceeds, first of all, anything that you could have ever thought, anything that you could have ever imagined for your life. It's going to far exceed that, first of all. The
Mm-hmm.
fulfillment, the joy, the happiness, the contentment that you'll be able to experience. It ain't about whether you got a lot of money, or, you're driving the fanciest cars, or you're able to travel all over the world.
Right.
That's not the point. It's being fulfilled. It's being,
Yes.
complete, being able to have a life of contentment, which
Mm-hmm.
people that have all these things sometimes do not have.
No.
And it took Joseph,
Yes.
13 years before he got to the point where he
Mm-hmm.
started to see brighter days, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, it was the first 13 years, like I say, 17 up to 30.
Mm-hmm.
He was in somebody's prison, or he was somebody's slave.
Right.
But once he hit that 30-year mark, now he's standing next to Pharaoh, and he's interpreting Pharaoh's dream.
Mm-hmm.
And in interpreting of his dream, he wasn't expecting nothing but at best to be let go and be
Mm-hmm.
freed.
Right.
Because when Pharaoh said, okay, what do I do? Joseph said, well, you need to go find somebody, that's
Mm-hmm.
got wisdom and understanding, and to know how to, kind of administer,
He was
this particular plan that I've set forth, or the strategy that I've set
right.
forth. Well, I didn't really set it forth. God did. I'm just
Yeah.
interpreting the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pharaoh said, well, how about you? Paraphrasing. He probably was
Huh? Didn't even know he's talking about himself.
right. And Pharaoh was like, well,
See, it's
why
amazing.
wouldn't we just use you? He was like, what the?
Right.
Oh,
Again,
okay.
God orchestrating. Oh, it's amazing. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And think about it. how else would he got to
Thank
Egypt,
you.
and how else would he have had an opportunity to stand before Pharaoh in order for him to do what he did at Potiphar's house, do what he did in the prison?
See, that's why we just gotta come on through here.
Because he was interpreting
Wow.
dreams in prison, and he was
Yeah.
leading households at Potiphar's house as well as prison. And he was being made
See.
for this position.
Oh, but look. Okay, do the math for me. So
Mhm.
Joseph dies at 110.
Yep.
And then he got to Pharaoh. He was with Pharaoh when he was what? You said
30.
30. So from 30 to 110, he was in the fulfillment of the dream.
80 years.
Compared to 22 years,
Nope.
is that right?
Really compared to 13 years of being in prison and being in slavery. Just 13 years.
So he went through
But
the process for 13 years.
13 years in the process. Then he became second only to Pharaoh at 30. Now, the part that you're talking about is where, the 10 sheaves were bowing down to him, which was his brothers.
Yeah.
That was when he turned 39.
Okay.
So when that aspect of the dream was fulfilled, he was 39 years old.
Oh, okay.
But he had gotten to the place that God wanted him to be in at 30.
Wow.
And this is where we're going to
That's
move
the
over to this other
frustration.
piece.
The time in fulfillment far exceeds the time of frustration. So he had
Exactly.
more fulfillment than frustration.
13 years of frustration for 80 years of fulfillment. 80 years of being second only to Pharaoh. 80 years of being the man as far as Egypt
Wow.
was concerned. Because for what he did for Pharaoh, it was amazing. But those skills and those abilities and those
Come
talents were
on.
honed when he was in Potiphar's house and when he was in prison. He learned how to be a good administrator of a household, and plus God was working through him and with him. So
Mhm.
once he got there, it was the scale was different, but the skill that was required was still the same.
See?
Only thing that changed was the scale. And the thing is he executed that plan to perfection, to the point where when they got into the years of famine, say
Yes.
first of all, they were the only one that had surplus, so people from all over started to come and buy, and I'm pretty sure they were buying at a pretty hefty price. So he was making bank left over, right? And then it got to the point where they didn't have anything else to sell, and he
Mm-hmm.
still had grain. So he was like, you know what? Especially the Egyptians, how about you give me your land? And he said, what I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna do is instead of me keeping your land, you can go back and you could till your land, but 20% of whatever you produce from this day forward and forever, it's mine, or mine being Pharaoh's. So you know how rich he made Pharaoh?
Right.
That's why it said in the book of, I think, Exodus, there are rules of Pharaoh that did not know Joseph.
Wow.
Because anybody that knew what Joseph did knew that he's one of the key figures that really established Egypt as a powerhouse.
Oh my
Now, who would have
goodness.
thunk it?
Right.
This dude talking
Wow.
about, my daddy and my mama and my brother's going to be bowing down to me. And here you
Oh
got
my
one of
gosh.
the, if not one of the greatest civilizations in the world, they all bowing down to. He said, God made me, a father to Pharaoh. He
See?
made him a lord in Egypt. He was second only to Pharaoh. Anything that he said went
Wow.
for 80
That's
years.
amazing.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And the thing is he would have never got there
Mm-mm.
if he leaned to his own understanding and if he did it the way that he thought it should have went.
Right. Or
Because, go ahead.
that one when if that baker would have remembered him when he first got out, it was like 3 days they got out, and well, I don't know when Pharaoh had that dream, but if he would have got out earlier, this would have been short circuited because he's like, I'm innocent. Tell him to get me out of here.
Yep, that is true. That is Genesis 40:14 through 15. And he
Yeah.
was 28 years old at
Yeah.
that time. The problem is Pharaoh had not had the dream yet.
Right. So how
So
would they have?
at best, he would have got out. At best, he would have went back home with his brethren.
And who could have interpreted that dream if he wasn't there?
Exactly. It was a setup.
See?
By everything that happened was set up by God. And that's the part sometimes that we don't understand while we're going through our troubles and our trials, while we're truly living the dream. We don't fully understand or appreciate everything that's happening to put us in the position to be able to come to full fulfillment of that dream.
Wow.
And again, had Joseph got out those 2 years earlier, that would have been the end of that, because that was his inroads into
Yes.
Pharaoh.
Everybody would have died because he didn't understand.
Exactly.
Nobody could interpret that dream.
Nope.
They didn't know what. Wow.
So
Okay.
God has strategically placed him in each place and space that he was in to get him there at that time.
Wow.
And that's why I say the timing of the Lord is perfect. We don't
Mm-hmm.
understand it. We can't always comprehend it. We don't know why in the world I had to go this route, but God knows exactly where you need to be and why you need to be there at that particular time. Because when he says something, when he says it's going to be thus and thus and thus, when he gives you a vision, when he gives you a dream, when he reveals your future to you, you best believe if you just trust him and obey him, it's going to happen.
Yep.
Now, the problem is you don't know how it's going to happen,
Right.
but you know it's going to happen.
Right. So it's like we have to understand that we may not understand just yet.
Oh, this is the one I really like.
So we only see in part, but God has the full vision.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem because when you look at Joseph, when he interpreted the dream, all he understood was that his brothers was going to bow down to him.
Mm-hmm.
All he understood in the second dream was that not only his brothers, but his father and his mother was going to bow down to him. What he didn't understand was that really wasn't the dream.
Wow. That was just a little part.
That was just a snippet of what was going to occur as a part of the fuller picture. The fuller picture was Joseph was supposed to be in Egypt, supposed to be second to Pharaoh so that he could save all of Israel from dying out in that famine.
See? And God knew just who to give that dream to.
Because if he had the skills, he had the ability, he had the talents, if you want to call it that, in order for him to do what was necessary at that level. And God strategically put him in different positions in his life. Might not have been the type of position that was ideal or what he had wanted or desired, but God put him strategically in these positions to develop that skill, that talent, and that ability. That's why he couldn't be lazy. He couldn't be slothful. He had to be diligent. He had to be, learning and growing and executing. He had to stay mindful. He had to realize that this was an opportunity for him to be made, even though he didn't know where it was going. But all of these things that he learned, all of these talents that he developed and he built up over that 13-year span, what was necessary for him to be able to stand, but not only stand, but to operate.
Yeah.
In the place that God had called for him to operate in.
And that's why we shouldn't try to make our desires and dreams God's plans, like turn it backwards. Let God work it out. It's not our will, but God's will,
Yeah, because like I said, when we look at what we want and what we desire, it's usually very narrow in scope, very limited in impact, and it's not the fullness of who we could be if we really truly submit our ways to God. Like I say, with Joseph, had he looked at it, as just that my parents and my mom, my brother's just gonna be bowed down to me, that's so narrow compared to it was all of the civilized world knew who this dude was, and they respected his craft.
Yeah.
And God is the one that put him there for such a time as that. Not only for the saving of his family, but for everybody.
Right. You have to talk on the natural, spiritual. You got to get there.
Yeah. But let me hit this. Don't try to. And again, what we try to do is we get a piece which God gives us, and we try to develop the rest of the story, based on what we see and what we think and how we feel, and also based on, all the different influences that we have in our lives as the world tells us what success is and, this, that, and the other. And we use that to craft what we think we should be or how we think we should be or what our future should look like. And when God gives us a word, before we get to, the natural versus spiritual piece, I would love for you to tell your story about what God told you.
Oh, boy.
But we get a word,
Yes.
and if it's not conducive or it's not one of those trigger words or, one of the popular words that everybody, by this time, God is he's about to.
God's going to use you greatly.
Yeah, he will be, but do you know how? Or do you know what it's going to take for you to get to that greatly used? Can you really see the full picture? And a lot of times we take the piece and the part, and again, we try to mold it and craft it into what we want and what we desire and what we think based on where we are today. And we miss that, no, that ain't what God is talking about. And as he begins to walk us through this living of the dream, if we continue to push our agenda, keep pushing our way, and not learning how to submit and commit, and learning how to really, rest in the Lord and trust Him with all our heart, mind, and soul, we start losing out. We don't get to the fullness because we keep short circuited it. We blaming God, but no, it's you. It's because you won't just give it to Him. You won't just let Him have it. I've been guilty of, God give you a word and you're like, I don't know about that one. And it's God speaking to you. You can feel it.
Don't want to receive
You
it.
feel it all in your giblets. It's the Lord. It's something about that won't go away from you. It sticks in your head. It resonates with you. But you try to dismiss it because I want to do this or because I want to go this direction and I don't know how this fits in with what I want. And then you start praying that, my will be done, not thy will, Lord, but my will be done.
Your will has to be my will. So
right. So can you please make that happen so that I can get everything I want?
And do it while I'm young.
Right.
Can enjoy it.
So I can have a long time of being, happy and fulfilled as I would define it, as opposed to how you see me and how you want to use me and how you designed me and purposed me, and we get there in some cases to where we want it to be. And we realize like, this is not what I expected. I thought it was going to make me happy. I thought it was going to cause me to feel some kind of way, fulfilled and accomplished. I thought I was going to be able to, really enjoy this moment. And I realized like I'm so far off the mark from where, I really thought I would be if I did all of these things that I had envisioned for myself.
Yes.
And then we start to finally figure like maybe I should start seeking the Lord. But we've gotten so
much
accustomed.
Time lost.
Yeah. Time lost, and we got so accustomed to doing our own thing, so it's a little bit of a challenge for us to really submit. And the growing pains that we could have went through, to your point earlier, when we were more nimble and we were bendable, pliable. Now we all crusty and dusty, and sometimes it cracks some stuff.
Yes,
rigid, and it's a little bit more challenging for us to make these adjustments and moves. Not that we can't, but it's just more challenging for us.
That's so true.
But when you look at it from the standpoint of like, Lord, I don't see the full picture. I know what you told me, but I don't see everything behind what you said. Yeah. You have the full view, so therefore, I'm going to trust you.
Yeah.
Joseph did not realize that his brothers and stuff bowing down to him was just, again, it was such a small piece of the full picture in the puzzle. And that's why once he realized like what God really was talking about, he didn't have any animosity towards his brothers. He didn't feel no ill will because he was like, this thing was of God.
Yeah.
I could not have gotten here any other way. God knew that. And he used you in that moment to get me to where he wanted me to be.
Right.
Like I say, he used you to help transition me towards my purpose, towards my destiny, towards the fulfillment of my dream. So therefore, I can't get mad at you. I can't hold no grudge against you. I can't still be offended because you did this. So what? It was necessary for me to get to where God wanted me to be. And because of that, I can help you. Because of that, I'm good. Because of that, I'm actually grateful. And I'm able to move forward and continue to fulfill his purpose for my life without having any kind of anchors.
Yeah, and he spared a whole nation.
Yes.
He saved their lives.
Yes. So where was he going next?
But I was going to share. You wanted me to share a little bit.
Sorry.
But,
I got excited.
Yeah, you got excited. I'm like, well, maybe I don't have to say nothing. But no, just I understand this lesson is perfect for me. I love it. Because I struggled with this, just understanding dreams. I'm a dreamer. Oh, I have all these dreams. And I remember years ago, when we were newly married, maybe a couple of years in, and we were having our babies. And I just prayed like, Lord, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And I only got one word, which was mother. And you would think
mad.
Yeah, you would think I'm having all these babies and that's all I'm good for is just having babies. I completely, like you say, missed the whole thing of what God was trying to tell me, to understand, to stretch that, to understand what does it mean by mother? What do you mean just have kids? That's all I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So I was frustrated for years because I thought that it was supposed to be, oh, you're going to be this great playwright. You're going to be like a female Tyler Perry. You're going to make movies. You're going to make books. You're going to do all these other things. I was like, so this is not fitting into what I had in mind. Like, no, No, this is not working. But as I started to humble myself and really start understanding what that word meant, it calmed me down like, oh, I'm learning to embrace what he called me to do, my purpose. And I'm still learning today. I'm not going to say I know it all, but as I get closer to God, my desires, as we talked about before, my desires are changing. It's no longer about me, myself, and I, my name great. Look at what I can do. Look at my gifts and my abilities. Look at my talent. Look at me, 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 me. Nothing like that anymore. Now it's like, Lord, thy will be done. But starting off, it wasn't that way. And I think I lost some years in there because for my making process for the fulfillment of motherhood, which is you never stop, but just fully understanding what that word means. It has helped me now as I get closer to the Lord and understanding more and more what he's calling me to do. It's really, if I never make another play, if I never, it's okay. I'm good. I am embracing God's will. It's so much more exciting to me than what I could ever imagine or dream. So yeah, that's just a little snippet, but I'm still learning and I'm excited about this lesson. I'm going to apply it to my life too. So whenever I start getting frustrated and thinking I'm supposed to be doing this, I should have been doing that. Like, it's a process. We don't know. The story's not even over yet. Who knows? But either way, I am okay,
True.
So, yeah.
And I've had the same thing where the Lord told me, gave me a snippet, and I immediately start trying to do all these things to make that happen. And I didn't realize, like, it's going to be in his time.
Right.
I just figured, well, you told me, so I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, like, wake up. Okay, where's it at?
Right.
Come on.
And just having to kind of slow down and, more importantly, start to listen for his direction and his guidance on what he wants me to do, and not be so rigid, talking about myself, rigid in how I expect it to come to fruition.
Yeah.
I was one that definitely, and it's as we talk about the natural and the spiritual motives piece, the spiritual part is over here, the natural part is over here. I handle my career, I handle that part of my life, financials and all of that stuff, and I give and I participate, but you handle my soul and you handle my attitude, my heart, my character towards you. But as far as the career and all that stuff, I got that. I went to school, so I got that. I go to work every day, I got that. I have a vision. I have my 30, 60, 90, I have my 2-year, I have my 5-year plan. I got that. I know where I want to be. I see the levels, I want to be a director, a VP. Yeah, I got that. I don't need you for that. I'm good. I'm Gucci.
Oh, Lord.
Please don't. I'm terrible with slang, so, oh well.
Yeah, I don't even
It's probably
bother.
out of date. So I was separating, the natural versus the spiritual. And we have to realize that God wants control of all of us. And when he's giving us a vision and he's giving us a dream, it's not just for a particular portion of us, it's for our whole entire person. And say God gives us gifts, he gives us talents, he gives us abilities, and he knows how they can be best utilized and how they can be best served for his purpose in every area, not just in the church side, but also the natural side.
Right.
And he wants to position us and put us in places and spaces where we can be good stewards, where we can do the 60, 90, 100-fold, where our talent can go from 1 to 10 or 2 to 5, 4, or whatever the case may be. He wants to position us for that. Joseph was the right person for that because he had the talents.
Yes.
He had the abilities. He had the skills, and God put him in the places that he needed to be in order to develop those skills and talents and abilities, so that when the time for him to really stand up on the main stage, he was ready.
He was ready.
And a lot of times we will put that on the spiritual side, but we won't take it to every area.
Yeah.
And allow God to really be the one, the conductor of our lives, to really be the one that sets the stage and the tone for who we're going to be and where we're going to go. We don't want to live his dream. We want to live our own dream.
Yes.
We find ourselves fighting so hard, struggling, many nights of frustration and anger.
You will not be fulfilled.
You can't be, because this is not who God called you to be, but yet you're trying to do it anyway.
But I'm good at it, though.
Yeah, but then you go to points of rebellion because, again, you have a very narrow view of what your skills and what your abilities and talents can afford you to do. I know we've talked many a times about, I can produce. I said, do you know all of the tenets of and all the different talents and activities that go on in production? it's not just for producing a play.
Yep.
Those skills and abilities can be used in so
Yeah.
many other places and spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But because, well, I think I only could do this.
Yep.
You think
Mm-hmm.
you can only
Yes.
do this.
Yes, you are telling the truth. Amen.
And God is like, you could do
Yes.
so much more
Yeah.
if you just give it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Put them at my feet.
Yeah.
Give me your gifts. Give me your talents. Let me work through you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me be the one to exalt
Come
you.
on,
Let me be the one to
yes.
put you where you need to be. Trust my process from the
Yes.
beginning to the end. Don't get faint. Don't get
Yeah.
weary in well doing, knowing that in due season you shall reap if you faint not.
That's
Both
right.
eternal
That's
life,
right.
but also even here, being able to be exactly who God has called you to be.
Amen.
Be diligent in all your matters, because
Yeah.
if you be diligent, God will allow you or put you in a position where you stand before kings.
Yep.
You stand before princes.
Yep.
It ain't got to be a person that's a millionaire. Kings and princes exist at all levels.
That's
You just
right.
don't even know who they are.
That's right.
You know, kings and princes in the kingdom of God, kings and princes in the kingdom of man.
Yep.
God could cause you to stand before great men, great women,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to give your gift, give your talent, do what God has called you to do, fulfill the dream that He's placed in you.
Yeah. You know, another point we shouldn't forget is not to look at like you look at someone else gifts and abilities, and because you're not like them,
Exactly.
or you may be good but not as good as them, or whatever the case is, you do nothing,
Exactly.
and you're frustrated and you're mad and all that. But you got to do what God gave you to do. Don't bury your talent like the other one did. It was like, well, I was,
True.
so you still have to do again what God has for you, and not other people.
Yeah. And you just have to trust the vision and the dream that God has placed in you for you.
Mm-hmm.
As you learn more, as He reveals it. Like I said, it's just like Joseph. It took him a while. You know when he remembered the dream? When he was 39.
Wow.
When his brothers came and he recognized them, and then they bowed to him because they were asking for grain. All of a sudden, the dream came back to his mind. He remembered what had happened. So many years had passed. So many things he had went through and endured, but he already been living, in the promise. He's already been enjoying, the blessing of God. But he realized, like, oh my goodness, this was a part of it, but this wasn't the full picture of it.
That's something.
I was here to be here for this moment, but not so they could bow down to me, but so that I could be a help.
See?
And that's where that spiritual and natural collide.
Mm-hmm.
God put him in a natural position for spiritual purpose.
Come on.
And
yes.
that's what God wants to do for us.
Come
but
on.
we're so carnal. Selfish. Like we won't allow God to put us in the natural position for the spiritual purpose.
Come on. Yes.
There are people in every layer and every sector of life that need to see God.
Mm-hmm.
They need to see Him being glorified in somebody's life. They hear it a lot, people talking a lot, but not many people doing. So to have somebody that's in their space, in their stratosphere, that they could point to and say, it's something about that person that's different from everybody else that I've seen at this level. It's something about it. Even like Daniel, he was like, something about you. Everybody had to confer, like, is the spirits of the gods dwell in this guy?
Yes,
we don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
But there's something about you that just makes you different.
Yeah.
And when you are humble and when you are submitted to God, He's like, hey, let me tell you, I probably can't tell you at work, but I can tell you outside of work, it's God that's working through me. He's the one that's blessing me. He's the one that's establishing me. He's the one that's prospering my way. I'm doing this by the grace of God. Because if you knew my story and how I got here, you would be like, how in the world?
And you still positive. You still have a great attitude. They don't know what it is. Oh my God, you're so positive. Oh my,
And the fact that you even hear it all. Because it's like, you should not, like Joseph, he should not have been sitting next to Pharaoh.
How'd that happen?
Absolutely no way are you supposed to be there. But here you are.
Yeah.
And not only are you there, but you're operating.
Yeah. One thing I don't want to discourage people to feel discouraged, like all dreams are not going to be you're not going to always be in front. Like you might not be in the position of leadership or on the platform preaching, or so we think like, oh well, if I don't have that dream, then I'm not significant or relevant. But just everyday living, just doing what God called you to do, to be a mother, to be a father, just be what God made you to be, living a submissive life to God's will. That's living the dream.
Absolutely.
And you
all day, every day.
Like you say, you don't know who's watching. just being a part of the body of Christ, being faithful to that, doing those things that you are help building the kingdom of God because you are living a submitted life to
Yeah.
Him. So don't get discouraged. Well, I don't have a talent like that, or I don't have anything to that to put my name on the roll or on the book or noteworthy or whatever. But actually, you do, and you are. Well, that's our time. Thank you so much for listening. We hope this episode has further enriched your perspective.
Until next time, I'm Mike.
And I'm Talesha.
God bless.